Well, how you doing today? Hey, thanks for tuning in. So here's our third episode of the Lincoln Real Estate Group update on the COVID virus, or I'm sorry, coronavirus on our Denver market. Another whirlwind of a week we had. Lots of things are changing. Boy, we got lots of stuff to go through with you guys today. Thanks again. Hey, and if you put your comments in the live Facebook feed, we will try to respond to those live. We're monitoring. It's going 4 or 5 different places, so we're kind of keeping an eye on it. And so if you've got a question or a comment, please go ahead and do that for us. But yeah, so we've got some super information for you guys this week. Lots of things happening, like I said, that are affecting our housing market. Now we're looking at a small chunk of it since the shutdown happened. But it's the bigger picture that really matters in real estate. And so we'll kind of take a peek at that. But, there's all sorts of things. People are talking about, migration now to the suburbs again, and there's help for the self-employed, and what's that going to do with qualifying for loans. So all of our ACE top-notch panel here is going to be addressing those things with us today. So with that, I'm going to just bring everybody in here, and let's see. We got our trusted broker, owner, leader, Jen Erzinger on the upper left, and Ann Schabacher, another broker associate like me. And then we got our special guest, Pam Wandry, with Columbine Mortgage, who brings us all the cool stuff from the financing world. And then I'm just going to stay down here in the lower right corner and watch. No, my name's Tony Pfau, and I'm a broker associate with Lincoln Real Estate Group, and so again, so howdy everyone, how are you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, Tony.
Good. How's everybody else?
Well,
week three,
and doing the Rona thing, Wow, every day, man, there's something going on. But so just a quick comments on the last week. Don't all start at once, but maybe, why don't you lead us off, Jen?
Well, we had another interesting week. We'll just go through stats real quick, and then we'll kind of dive in. But total active, we have 5,387 units on the market right now that are active. This week, from Thursday to yesterday, we had 856 go live. Pendings are down. 582 went under contract. We still closed 491 units, and 165 withdrew.
Wow.
There is a reason some of those pendings are down. I don't know what the exact percentage is. It's really hard to drill down to that number, but there are a fair amount of listings that aren't allowing showings, but they're still in active status. So essentially they'll say, we're not going to allow showings until after the state order is lifted, or bring us a contract and then you can see the property. There's a lot of creative ways things are happening, but it's also driving down that pending number. And of course, less people are out. That goes without saying. But I feel like that PIN number is a little misleading as opposed to some of the showing restrictions on the new listings that have come up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jen, though, you still had a pretty interesting weekend, though, with your showings.
I did. So I am working fairly heavily with one buyer simply because they're in a crunch and they do have to get moved. They're in a good price point. And we tried to show 2 properties that went on the market. They both went under contract immediately within 48 hours. We're in the $600,000 range, so this is not small dollar amounts. And then I had another one yesterday that she wanted to see, and it went under right away as well. So certain price points are still moving very quickly. And I know Pam had a borrower go under contract this weekend as well. So and there's definitely activity happening. And that's kind of how I ran across, we're on the market, we're active, but we're not showing until the state order is lifted. I did run across several of that, so.
Sorry, guys, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tony, but how are people generally handling these new virtual showings?
Yeah, that's a huge deal. I was watching several posts on people that are doing virtual showings. I mean, I tell you what, they're getting it done. But Jen had didn't you have experience with that?
My current borrowers are not comfortable with that. So yes, that is something that could be done. And I've definitely seen a lot of agents produce virtual showings, which I think is great. I think that's a great way to try and market your property. But a lot of people, at least on my side, my people are not comfortable with that. So.
Well, yeah, and it poses a number of different issues, and again, we're still in the front of this, but I think we had talked the other day, and it was like, okay, well, people got under contract doing a virtual, they hadn't even seen the property, and it was like, okay, the seller's like, okay, you got to have your inspection done within 4 days,
right,
and then possibly, I mean, if this becomes a new thing, like when we all went from email to text, but now it's like, okay, we got to be doing it virtually. There might have to be some other mechanisms contract wise to be able to facilitate that, but I don't know, I'm looking at the way it's going, I'm like, well, we're at some point there's probably going to be a shift, but I'm with you. I mean, the clients are just like not quite at that comfort level to be able to just, throw a ton of money at it. And we were just thinking the other day, and this isn't anything that's really happening, but, to be able to put I don't want to say the word option contract, but, kind of like it's a smaller, like two phases of earnest money, one's for the ability to get the contract, and then they all go look at it and do whatever. But that's down the road.
If purchasers are not allowed to see the property until inspection, if you think about it, this becomes unaffordable for a buyer very quickly because they're paying for that inspection. If an inspector shows up, we're paying between $500 and $700 worth of inspections. Buyers are not going to go for that. So we are going to have to create some sort of workaround.
Yeah.
If we get too deep into this. I mean, I think it'll be okay for the next 30, 60 days, but
yeah,
if we get too deep, we're going to have to come up with a much better option.
Right. Now, the one thing we had mentioned with the pendings sort of doing what we thought they'd do is a question would come up is like, well, what's that doing to prices? Ann, you were taking a look at that. I think I got the graph up here on the screen. Let me see if I can get it. You want to, whoops, wrong thing. Yeah, don't worry. It's the technical guy back here doing his thing. But this is the average prices, the average price over the last year. Ann, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I mean, overall, we are holding steady. Year after year. From this time last year, we're a little bit slower, a little down a little bit this year, as far as an increase that we saw last month over the same time last year. But we're still holding steady. They're still increasing.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of, what we might be experiencing as well is some of the lending restrictions that's going on right now. Some lenders have tightened up, as Pam mentioned last week. And so we're seeing some of that lending tighten up a little bit, but once...
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry, technical difficulties. The stream just crashed on us, so hopefully everybody's could be overloaded, whatever. Sorry about that, guys. But at any rate, so the takeaway is the average price. It's not being impacted as of yet. It's still up from last year, although we saw a little bit of a thing from last month. Again,
it has to be expected.
Well, yeah, and
we're going through, but we're still not underneath that number from last year, and that's kind of the key takeaway here.
Right, and I think for our audience, the real estate stats. I mean, we got to look at in a longer term. They're kind of slow to respond. What we're looking at is a little microcosm, but and even in the pending sales or if we get a little dip down, I mean, towards the end of the month when volume picks up and stuff, so we got to look at a longer period. But we're really taking a look at the shorter, like what's really happening now, because that kind of points us in the direction. But like I just anything could happen. But right now, I think the takeaway is that it's looking pretty. I mean, I'm not seeing anything that says, "Oh my," you know, like, you know. I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, it's slow, but you know.
We have
what do you
3
do?
weeks worth of data from March, so
Yeah.
we've been under our stay order for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We have end of March data. April data is going to be interesting, so as we continue to go through this, but I think we'll have a really good feel of where we're at
Yeah.
mid to late April.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be allowed to exit our cages by then.
Let's take.
Let out of our timeouts.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at
Well,
that. I've been tracking the 7-day movement just to kind of see what's going on. So let me see if we can bring that up without crashing our stream. But yeah, on the 7-day movement here, yeah, pendings are down, right? But interestingly, we had this little rise in new listings coming on. Now, these are not. This number is the number of new listings that came on in 7 days, not the number of active listings, which I think Jen said is like right now, like we're over 5,000 on the market.
53.
But these are what
53,
came on the market. So new stuff coming on, and then the blue line here is what's going down. Now, interestingly, this little line down here tracks, and it kind of goes backwards, the number of price decreases. And so as we got into here, as the inventory went up, as this line goes up, it's just saying there's more homes that are adjusting their price downward, listing or asking price. But that's not a true indicator of like that housing prices are falling. A lot of them are like, you know, we went on kind of optimistically spring priced, and we're adjusting to what the market's doing here. But
There's not a lack of buyer activity out there.
well,
So
you're right. I mean, you know, still is 700 going on under contract and 900 coming on. Okay, so the inventory's, at least for this last week, right? Inventory kind of popped up a little bit, and things, you know, I think we're now seeing that slowdown that I think we were all expecting back in here. It's like, well, yeah, this is reasonable. Nobody, you know, every day it's like, wear a mask, don't go outside, you know, don't go to the store, you know, don't even go to the park, just don't go anywhere, you know. But stay home. Yeah. So let me get back here. But
it'll be interesting to see if we see a little bit of rebellion in the market as the longer, you know, if we start getting into mid-April. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if people are just kind of sitting back right now because we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be. We definitely should be, but there's only so long people are going to sit still if you are in a position where you need to move.
If you got to move.
Know, you got to get on down the road. It's going to happen.
Right,
so.
right. And so then there's been tons happening in financing land. Yeah, Pam?
Yeah. Well, some interesting stats that we discussed yesterday that I thought we should share is that true to what's going on in our world right now, but about 24% of applications for purchases is a decrease in about 24% compared to this time last year in purchase applications. But refinance, as everybody knows, everybody's like, oh, the rates are low, I've got to refinance now. So everybody's slammed, but those applications are up 26% just the past week or for the year, but 168% as compared to last year. So huge bump in the refinance market for mortgages.
So we're down 24% in purchases, and up.
But up in refinance applications, yes. So the mortgage industry is still moving, you know, even with all the shifting that's going on in guidelines and overlays. Lenders are still trying to get things done. Rates last week, you know, the Fed obviously is intervening in the bond market and trying to do what they can to bolster the mortgage industry. And so the bond buyback that they've been doing has been helping. And so towards the end of last week, rates kind of went down a little bit, just little bits each day for the last 3 days, yesterday included. They just kind of kept bumping down just a tiny bit. Freddie Mac quoted 3.33% for the end of last week was the average.
Wow.
But that's with almost 3/4 points in points, 3/4% in points. I just did a quick look on my lenders, and we are sitting at about 3.5 with the credit, so that was right in line. And that's for a vanilla 30-year, 80% LTV loan, great credit, kind of a loan. But so things are still moving along in the industry. Things are a little more challenging to qualify some borrowers. We've talked in the past about how FHA and VA guidelines have been tightened up a little bit with credit scores, and debt to income ratios are holding a little bit firmer, that they're looking for those.
They haven't eased up in that market this week at all. It's still.
VA is not quite as tight. VA, they have other guidelines that have made it easier, just that were implemented in January. And so they're not quite as restricting as the FHA, but those FHA borrowers, they have to have the 680 FICO score now. And these are overlays from lenders, but that's generally the consensus, about 680 FICO, 45% DTI. So they're just making sure that those borrowers really are going to qualify. And then the big one thing that's happening with loans that are actually trying to be closed is verifications of employment within 72 hours of funding. And you have to, a lot of lenders are making them sign something right between closing and funding, saying that they still have a job, they still have the same income level that they had. They're calling or emailing these employers, trying to make sure that these people still have jobs. And some of them have actually, I've heard of a couple that post-funding had a VOE that came back where the borrower's income hours had been decreased. And so trying to figure out how that's going to shake out.
So, yeah, what are they going to do after you've closed?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of mine. I don't think you can do that. But
I don't think you can either.
So
yeah.
How are you going to handle that?
We're going to see. And these aren't my borrowers, so I'll just keep hearing through the pipeline what's happening and how things are being handled. The other big thing that everybody wants to know about is the forbearance.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about these forbearance. How can I get a forbearance? I'm going to be unemployed for the next 6 months. The biggest thing to know is that you need to call your employer, or not your employer,
Yeah.
your servicer, your lender.
Call your
whoever
ex-employer.
owns your loan.
Yeah.
Call your employer, your servicer for your loan, and find out what options you have. Some of them are following their own guidelines. Some of them are following what the government has laid out, with the 2 months forbearance. But this is not forgiveness. Everybody needs to know this does not mean that you can skip your payments and not have to make them up. You may have to pay them at the end of your period. You may have to just have them tacked on to the end of your loan. Every servicer is going to be different. And then we don't know how this is going to affect credit going forward. It will appear as being paid because your lender will continue paying those payments for you, but there will be a notation just similar to student loans that are in forbearance that you're in forbearance, and that's on your credit record. So that may show up when you go to apply for loans or something in the future, and they may say, oh, this borrower may not be as stable as we, and it could potentially have effect on how credit is viewed in the future.
Well, and even if they said, okay, you know what, this forbearance can't affect your credit, you're still up against the people at the cubicle that are gonna or they can't get their computer system to do it. So even though if they say, yeah, it's not going to affect your credit, it's like practical matter.
It's still notated.
It's still notated. And somebody's not going to be able to stop it from going because it's all automatic. But anyway, back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
oh, you're fine. Yeah, but it's all to be seen. We don't know how this is going to impact in the future. But so it's not something to think that is going to be a free ride. It's going to have no impact on you. But it is there for those who truly need it, who are, unable to make those payments. Suggestion is to do what you can. We've talked about, your taxes and insurance, your utilities, try to keep up with whatever you can.
Well, and HOA too.
HOA especially,
yeah.
That place a lien on your property. Do what you can, but immediately call your lender and find out what your options are. That's the best advice you can have right here is if you think you're going to be in a position where you can't make payments, call your lender now and figure out what you can do.
Right.
We cannot beg you enough to make your payments if you can. Please, please make your payments if you can. I mean, it's a great service. I mean, they came together really quick, and this is fabulous for people who genuinely need it. But if you don't need to do this, make your payments. It will be much better for you. It's going to be a shock at the end of 6 months, and you have what, 20 grand or whatever 6 months worth of payments is due. I mean, how are you going to do that? You have to be really realistic in how this is going to play out. Mm-hmm. And Ann and I talked about this at length. Like, we're really trying to work with, well, and Tony too, just work with our clients and, you know, please have a firm understanding of what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
Yeah. And make sure you ask the lender the tough questions, because you need to know if that payment's going to be due. Mm-hmm. If you skip 4 payments, is it due on the 5th payment? You need to know that. Is it actually deferred? Is it tacked on to the end of your loan? Now you're paying interest on interest.
Right.
You got to know the ins and outs of what you're going to get yourself into if you're going to try to defer your payments.
Right.
And as a lender with creating new loans, I have a fiduciary responsibility to ask hard questions of my borrowers, make sure that they are really going to be employed and, you know, their income is going to be stable, you know, because when we do these documents, we're saying they're going to be able to make their payments.
Right.
I've done my due diligence. You're saying you're going to be able to make your payments. But if you have any feeling or thoughts that, you know, I don't think my job's going to be here in 2 minutes or, you know, 2 months, whatever the time is, you probably shouldn't be taking out a loan.
Right.
So,
well,
we just have to be cognizant of those things.
Yeah, and I know that was we had spoken about that, you know, last 2 episodes. It's like, you know, if I mean, with my buyers, it's like, if you don't know the security of your job in the next, you know, 6 months, you maybe should just wait, you know, and so I've got a few waiters, you know, but no, real important. And I think the other takeaway too is that, you know, you can't just throw your hands in the air and not do anything while we're going through this, because you know, a lot of the big machines, you know, your mortgage payment and all that, those are big machines, you know. Like you said, I just want to ditto that, you know, how important it is to stay in front of that and be proactive, I think, is a thing. You know, so you have to wait on hold for a little bit while the lenders are fielding thousands of calls, but hey, man, you know, what else are we going to do around the house, you know? But I mean,
yeah. And keep in mind also, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I mean, there's what are we up to now from an unemployment?
10 million. So I mean, that was the last
10 and a half. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's higher from Friday's number. So wherever we're at, that's so many households that are truly in trouble. And that's what this program is there for, is to help the people who are genuinely in trouble.
Yeah. Speaking of helping.
Not to say, and it's not to say I want to have 4 months off or 6 months off my payment. That's not how this is designed to work.
Right.
And please, if you're unsure, pick up the phone and call.
Yeah.
Call us, call your lender. Make sure you understand how this is going to work for you.
Yeah. No, great.
And what your lender is actually offering.
Great. Speaking of helping people, for those who are tuning in, if you check the Livecast page or any of our Facebook pages, we put up a, and now of course, not the graph, but there is a little sign that somebody else had posted up that would be really handy, that you can print and put on your door, that just alerts anybody coming to the door. It's like, hey, somebody here is high risk, you know, and so please call us or text us. And that's available to download. It's a downloadable file on any of the Facebook pages. And then I don't think I have it up, but on there also, since we're kind of going back to, you know, the guidance was to wear masks. I'm not wearing mine, but yet today, but and then trying to, like, I said, oh, we got to wear masks. So I'll go to Amazon and I looked up masks, and it's like delivery date in June sometime. And I'm like, Okay, well, let me see if I get to find another one. Oh no, this one's better. It's like end of May, and I was just like $50. But any rate, but we'll post this too. There's a recipe, not a recipe. What do you call it?
Tutorial.
Tutorial, a pattern, or this YouTube that one of our neighbors posted up there, and it has a pattern and instructions on how to sew your own mask. Now, I haven't tried it.
How about glue? Can we glue it?
I haven't tried it yet. It's like we've got a couple around here, but it may end up being the bandana thing. But I did notice that most of the neighborhood was out wearing their masks while walking their dogs the other day. So I got the message now. Yeah, no, they're trying. Better safe than sorry. I mean, I just every day, but yeah. So what other things have you guys been seeing your people do, or comments where I haven't seen, and it doesn't mean that we don't have any, I just haven't seen a comment come in yet. But so while we're waiting for some comments.
Well, Tony, one thing I ran across the other day is we are not expecting any kind of massive credit tightening when this is done. When we, get released from our cages, as Jen said.
Right.
So we expect lending to kind of go back to, a little bit how it was before. There might still be some overlays for a little bit until we work through getting everybody back to work and things like that. But the good news is that we expect rates to stay low, and we don't expect any kind of massive going forward where this is going to be the new normal.
Right.
We will likely see it go back to kind of how we were before, which I believe that might be some of the decrease in the new credit applications, the new purchase applications that Pam was talking about, the 24%. Right now with these overlays, there's people that 3 weeks ago could probably qualify that can't qualify right now.
Yeah.
I have 2 buyers that in that exact position right now that just gonna have to wait.
And there's a lot. But as soon as we get back to kind of what's going to become our new normal at that point, we'll see some of these buyers coming back into the market because now they can reapply and get a loan.
Well, and I caught one of the press conferences, and they were like, when you mentioned the new normal, and they were talking about, okay, well, will we ever get back to post or pre-coronavirus land? And I'm like, and he's like, well, we're probably going to have to be making some changes. And I got to thinking, it's like, well, you know what, when we started e-signing, right, and when we had to transition, everybody got cell phones, and pretty soon we're texting, and we had all these other things as the technology changed. Well, okay, yeah, we're going to have some different dynamics, but I don't think it's going to be debilitating, and in some ways I got to thinking, I go, well, maybe this is sort of a blessing in disguise. I mean, already we've got, just in dealing with the crisis, people using Zoom and they're communicating like this, and I'm like, wow, I think we will adapt, and I think we'll get to that new normal. It could be better, and so I'm kind of keeping a positive thing. I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And you know what? Yeah. It might be pretty cool that, okay, we do a virtual and they get a mechanism to work out like that, and you get under contract and then work it out. We got another step. Well, right now we're like, but maybe down the road, it might work to our benefit, to everybody's benefit.
Might be a little more efficient in the end once we get the kinks worked out.
Sure. So, I mean, what is it?
Business. 90%
or 80% of the homes that buyers are interested in, they're finding on, they see online. And so, okay, well, maybe it's just a natural progression, and it's something that the I don't want to say their names, but the ones that want to go to like virtual, like make real estate like Amazon. Well, I don't think it'll ever get like that, but I think there would certainly be some things toss into you guys. Yeah.
Well, in that line of that same vein, e-notarization was made valuable here in Colorado by Governor Polis. There's been some lag to that. Obviously, the lenders have to be set up for it. Title has to be set up for it. And the counties have to be accepting of that. So apparently those three things all have to be in alignment. So they're not quite fully up and running here in Colorado, but hopefully because of this, we will get to that point. So,
right.
And that, I think that's a great step in the right direction. You know, it makes it more convenient for a lot of people, and just economical. I mean, all sorts of upsides to it. Obviously, there's still able to be wet signature signings if they want.
Right.
But, you know, for people that are, you know, wives that work over here, husbands that work over here, they can both log in and sign at the same time. I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping everything
huge.
gets ironed out and that we are able to do that. Unfortunately, it's not happening quite yet, even with the executive order, but hopefully soon.
Trying.
Yeah.
Yep. We're trying what we can.
Yeah.
Well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but we did want to touch on this podcast that we saw. Or it was another Facebook Live that we all watched, and sort of the big takeaways. And I think you should start off with our big takeaways from the MBS Highway
Yeah.
Live. All right, I can. Did I put you on the spot? Sorry.
A little bit, because I'm not sure which part you're referring to. There was so
All of
much
it. Yeah,
good
so go for it.
information.
Do it.
The feds are listening, because originally, I think we mentioned last week that they kind of went a little overboard in buying up the mortgage-backed securities and created a lot of volatility for people like Pam, a lot of craziness, and for lenders, and kind of what it did to that aspect. So the good news is the feds have listened. They've backed off. There is some what I would call unintended consequences, not on purpose, but the feds really have said that they're going to do what they need to do to help everybody through this current situation. But one of the unintended things that they came out with is putting the pressure on the mortgage servicers. And with that,
So
we have to
work with the. Is that to work with the consumer?
Part of this deferral, it has to do with deferring your payments. It puts pressure on the servicers. When a lender sells a loan to an investor, there is a servicer involved. And whether or not you make your payments, that servicer still has to pay the investor. So that's going to put a little bit of pressure on. And we're working through that right now. The feds are listening. That's the good part. But I call it an unintended consequence because they really did step up. Yeah. They've done what they needed to do, but now we have to sort of work through that and what that's going to look like at the end. We're still a little new into this right now. Yeah. I mean, everything is changing on a daily basis, if not, like check in the afternoon, we'll see if it's different than it was this morning.
Right.
I mean, it's like the ultimate, you have the middleman, the servicer, nobody's making their payments, but they still have to pay the investor, your taxes, they still have to pay your insurance. They're required to keep all that current. And as you can see, if 10.5 million households come in and stop making payments, I know it's not that much, but even half that, that could collapse a middle market very, very quickly. So that was the unintended consequence that Ann was talking about. Is whoops, we're going to collapse the servicing market. So backpedal, with any government intervention, there's always unintended.
Well, the Fed started out with buying the mortgage-backed securities, and let's collapse the lenders. Well, no, let's fix that. Okay, so now we're going to
collapse the service.
Now we're going to
the buck has to get passed somewhere. It's going to have to land somewhere. That's the thing. The backstops are being found. They just have to figure out now this one.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
We did this, but now we created an issue here, so now we have to fix this. And oops, that created an issue here.
It's bumper
we just
cars.
Have to continue working.
Bumper cars, and they'll get through it. But because it's unknown territory. Yeah, I mean,
it's all uncharted territory. Exactly.
It's very fluid at the moment.
No, well,
but the overall takeaway from that is just the Fed stepping up, the Fed's listening. We're going to get through this. It's going to be fine at the end, but we're going to have some hiccups along the way, and you're going to hear some news, and it's going to sound like the earth is falling down, and it's not.
Yeah,
so just keep that in mind.
Right.
And if you have questions, pick up the phone. We'll be happy to answer them.
Totally. Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Or find the answer.
Or find the answer if we don't know.
Well, there was something else interesting about that that podcast. Was it like a flight to the burbs maybe coming back up?
Well, these heavily urban populated areas, people are really rethinking that. So the expectation is in high dense areas that the suburbs are all of a sudden going to become popular again. So we're going to start tracking those numbers. We do not know if the Denver metro is populous enough to see a migration like that, but we're gonna track it and see. But definitely areas like New York City. Do you want to be living in Lower Manhattan right now? I mean, there, these heavy populated areas.
Man, I'd be fine. Try to find a farm. 5 miles to the nearest neighbor if I was coming from New York City. Yeah.
Yeah, that will be interesting.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how those numbers shake out. We just kind of started tracking them.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a few weeks to really see if there's any
movement.
That might be a year-long track, but we'll
it's not like everybody decided, but actually starting it to watch it, because it's like we kind of have to set up those special searches. Otherwise, we go into the system. It's like, okay, we can get these general things. It cuts off March 1st and stuff. But I think that'll be interesting to see what's happening, because anybody in the metro area, what it's like to even try to drive downtown and in the Highlands, and so that's good. But so now we're coming up on time here. Do you guys have any other cool things that you've seen, or words of positive encouragement, or
I have a very useless piece of information.
We like that.
We all love that.
Hear it.
Okay, on another note, online alcohol sales are up 243%.
Shocking. I heard Texas is taking the lead in that too. The great state of Texas.
Well,
and overall U.S. sales of alcohol are up 55%.
Wow.
So
a lot of day drinking going on, apparently.
A lot of day drinking.
Yeah, they moved that time from noon to 9 a.m. now to
brunch time.
I do have another fact that is actually very important, because it really hasn't changed, that home buying is still going to be your best way to build wealth.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Don't stop the buying and selling.
Well, and I think that's huge, because everybody, time the market. Look what happened to the stocks. We're going to time it to get it, and it's like, if you look at the historical, I don't have it handy, but we went through the housing collapse, but then in, I believe it was 2015 or 16, we were right back on the same trajectory. Had we never had that down. So in the long run, it is the most solid, the smartest thing you can do to build wealth, but you got, it's not like, it's not like, okay, next year I'm gonna cash this puppy out. I mean, it's gonna ebb and flow, but in the long run, housing is always maintained. And
that was a true collapse we had in 2008 and beyond. This is not a true collapse. This is a blip. This is a bump in the road. So.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's really not that big of a bump yet, really. So,
right,
like a little speed bump.
Yeah. Well, and
yes,
and once the clouds clear, the storm passes somewhat. Depending on how these schools, I think they're going to be developing a little bit more of the online factor, and these parents now that have had to, and I think Pam, you are at home.
Day one today.
Online
learning.
Online learning, right? So it's it's a whole learning curve for these families. It's like, okay, well, where do you conduct the school business with your kid? And are we going to be needing to think about
computers going at once with different videos, and it's kind of crazy. And I was FaceTiming with one of my relatives, and their kids were in their rooms on their beds doing their homework. They had started early, and I thought,
I know I don't accomplish much in my bed with my iPad, but there's going to be some needs that are going to be coming up out of this that are like, okay, yeah, where are the kids going to study? It's like not do we have enough? Do we have 2-car garage, and do we have this? Do we have that? But it's like, now where are the kids going to study? And that kind of stuff. So
yeah, we're running into that for sure.
Yeah. So. Well, good.
I'm kind of actually excited to see some of the things that might come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people are going to get a little inventive and kind of develop
really cool
processes.
New cool consulting companies are going to be coming up in all sorts of niches.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little excited.
Yeah, instead of the home theater, it's like the home theater and daytime classroom,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so, I mean, I remember seeing all of the looks into the future in the 90s, how everything was going to be conducted online, and you're going to be going to school online, and all of this science fiction at the time, and like, well, here we are. We may have been forced into it. The future is now, So, yeah. Well, that's good. So, perfect, man. I think we're kind of running up on time here. I haven't seen. Let me just check and see if we got any comments that came in. If you aren't catching us live and you want to put a comment into the comment section of wherever you saw the live cast, we will respond to it either via the Facebook or address it on our next live cast. We're going to keep trying to do these weekly as this stuff evolves, because there is new information every week. I mean, it just starts to go, and as we start to piece it together, the big picture's kind of coming into focus, but it's still a little blurry right now because it's out there still.
Still learning.
But yeah. So with
All
that,
right. Well, thank you.
The only thing I can say is, if somebody has questions, the only dumb question is one that's not asked.
Mm-hmm.
So please feel free to call us. There's a lot of misinformation going around. You hear one story on one news channel and another story on another news channel.
Right.
Please pick up the phone call.
Yeah.
We're working
here to
really
help.
hard. Yeah. We're working really hard to get accurate information. So I've watched more podcasts and economists, and oh my gosh, we've been really diving in really deep to try to get you guys well informed. So.
Yeah, good.
We're trying to stay ahead of it, and if you have literally any question, it's never done. Please call.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I think that about wraps us up here, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody watching. Thanks for everybody watching later. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Pam.
Take
all
care,
right, guys.
everyone. Have a great week.
Have a great week, and we'll see you all next time. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks again.